I am from the University of Texas at Dallas's Psychology Department. This is the study that was completed in collaboration with Ablanedo. In our study, we found that when it comes to making social decisions, perceived emotional intelligence and fairness of offer play no role in the outcome. Our research question was, does perceived emotional intelligence and fairness of offer affect social decision making? So I'm just going to start off with some background with the introduction. To our knowledge, perceived emotional intelligence and decision-making research have focused on decisions that affect the individual as opposed to social decisions, which is defined as decisions in coordination with others. Emotional intelligence is defined as how we recognize, examine, and manage our emotional ability, and perceived emotional intelligence is our own perception of how we manage emotional abilities. We implemented the ultimatum game for the social decision-making aspect, which is an economic game involving two players, the proposer and the responder. The proposer offers a split of money, and the responder decides to agree, and both players get the split of money agreed upon, or the responder declines and no player receives any money. We hypothesized that in a split of $1,000, those in the low perceived emotional intelligence group would only accept a fair offer of $400 or higher, while those in the high perceived emotional intelligence condition would accept an unfair offer and a fair offer, with a value ranging from $100 to $400. And what constitutes as a fair or unfair offer will be described shortly. Moving on to our methods and procedure section, we conducted our study as an online survey. Participants were presented with 8 questions in which they were told would measure their perceived emotional intelligence, but this was implemented as a distraction task, so this was our use of deception. The results from the perceived emotional intelligence questionnaire was irrespective of the participants' actual results, because each participant was randomly placed in either a high perceived emotional intelligence group or a low perceived emotional intelligence group. We removed the role of the proposer in the ultimatum game for the sake of our survey, and instead gave a description of either a fair offer, which is a 40% and 60% split, and an unfair offer, which is a 20% and 80% split. The next question asked the participant what would have been the minimum value they would have accepted in case they would have accepted a lower or higher value.
After conducting our 2x2 between subjects factorial and NOVA, it was determined that neither PEI perceived emotional intelligence in the high or in the low condition, nor fairness of an offer, so an unfair or a fair offer, had any effect on the minimum value that participants were willing to accept in the ultimatum game. Our hypothesis was that those in the low PEI condition would accept a fair offer with a minimum value of $400 or higher, while those in the high PEI condition would accept an unfair and a fair offer with a ranging value of $100 to $400. This was stemmed from the idea that because our attributions for the high PEI condition were empathy, the participant that did receive the high PEI would want to continue with pro-social behavior and would be willing to accept a minimum value a lot more than those in the low PEI condition. We did find a couple of really interesting things in our study. One of those being that the importance of social context in social decision making, specifically in the ultimatum game. Typically, the ultimatum game is conducted in person, with one person being the proposer and another being the responder. But due to the nature of our study, we did actually do it in survey format. So we acted as the proposer, and then our participant acted as a responder. If our study were to be taking into an in-person interactive experience, I do definitely think there would have been a difference in effect. I do think there would have been a bigger effect going on there, just because participants would have gotten that one-on-one interaction and they would have gotten to know the person a little bit better. The role of empathy is also really important, and we didn't find an effect for it, but we did find a couple participants did want to take that into consideration. Whenever asked to input the minimum value that they would have accepted, a couple of our participants did express that for them personally, it would have been really important to know what the proposer was going through financially. So if they needed the money more than they did, then they definitely would have been much more willing to accept a minimum value. So adding in that personal information, whether it be in a survey format or whether it be in a personal interaction format, definitely would be something that future research should look into. We also had a couple of other findings that we did think were really interesting. One of those being that if a real emotional intelligence assessment were to be created and were to be given to the participants, and then if they were able to see the other participants' results, would that have any effect on how participants reacted to the proposer's offer? So if they were more willing or less willing to accept it. I think this would be really interesting. We thought this would definitely have a significant effect because it would add to the idea that maybe the other participant didn't have the best intentions, or maybe they did, or maybe they actually didn't have good empathetic skills, so they didn't want to give me more money, so therefore I don't want to accept any offer, so we both leave with no money. So this research definitely could lead into a lot of different future research, especially when conducting what type of factors can influence a decision in the behavioral economic games. Just because the research was really limited before, we do definitely hope that future research does try to see what other factors could have a significant effect.